Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, we've got Rob Hopkins with us. He's way up there in the Yukon of Canada, where he's putting together the most amazing software. It's openbroadcaster.com. He puts together software that people can use from home or anywhere to make radio great, even in small towns. Chris Tobin joins us for This Week in Radio Tech. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by the new Ruby console from Lavo. See Lavo in your future at lavo.com/TWiRT. And by the Telos Alliance and Zipstream processing and streaming software and hardware. Choose your platform and stream like you mean it. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. Delighted to be here. Chris Tobin is along, too. I'm at my usual digs in Nashville, Tennessee. I work for the folks at the Telos Alliance. They're my employer, so if you hear some positive things about them, well, you know, I kind of know about them. And actually, the Telos Alliance is getting into and already producing some products that have to do with our topic today. So we'll inject those where it's appropriate. Chris Tobin is with us. He is at another on-location thing where he's getting ready to do a big radio thing. Hey, Chris, welcome in.
Hello, Kirk. Yes, I'm at the performance space here at our radio studios. This is set up for tomorrow. We have the New York University Wayne Shorter Ensemble coming in to perform for Jazz Appreciation Month, which is April. But down the hall at our other studios, we're actually going to have the Ask the Governor show, first time with the new governor of New Jersey. So in about 2 hours, shortly under 2 hours, it's going to be pretty crazy around here, but it's going to be fun.
Now, so the governor of New Jersey, would that be? That's still Chris Christie, isn't it?
No, the new governor is.
I'm sorry,
Governor Murphy.
Governor Murphy.
Yeah.
Am I politically backwards? So thanks.
That's okay. That's okay. It's only been 2 months. I mean, you know, he's still learning his way through, and it's, you know, people are still getting acclimated. But no, it's good.
Now, see, if I were Governor Murphy, I would want to do the show in the same room as that drum set. That way, I could have whenever I needed one, it'd be right there. There you go. See.
Nothing like an authentic rim shot, right?
An authentic rim shot, not just recorded, but a real rim shot. Because you got somebody sit there and play it, but I'm sure there's plenty of drummers who could do that. So yeah,
absolutely.
So you might want to pop that put that idea into Governor Murphy's ear and say, hey, next time you do one, come down the hall. We've got, you tell a funny joke, we'll make sure people laugh. We'll get the rim shot in there.
I'll make an attempt to talk to his press secretary about that, and we'll see how that goes.
Talk to his press secretary. All right. Because when a politician speaks, you never know when to laugh and when to take him seriously, right?
This is true, because everybody speaks very cautiously, egg crates and the whole bit. Yes.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, listen, I don't know if I envy you or not. I love doing live broadcasts, but everything's got to go right for this one, right?
Well, a lot of preparation. We did a dry run this morning with all the folks in the studio. So yeah, everything will be fine.
Good deal. All right. Well, hey, I want to bring in our guest. I met our guest, Rob Hopkins, by phone and by Skype a few weeks ago. And Rob is doing something that I just find extraordinarily fascinating. And I just hope that it's going well for him. We'll get to have him tell us how well it's going for him. It's a website and a whole suite of software and workflows called openbroadcaster.com. Openbroadcaster.com. And we're going to be talking about Rob's vision and product line and how since it's an open source software, how other people are contributing to it. So let's bring him in. Rob Hopkins from, where are you in Canada, Rob?
I live in a place called Tagus, Yukon, but I'm actually right now in the city of Whitehorse. That's the capital city of the Yukon territory. We're right next door to Alaska, about maybe 100 miles from Skagway, Alaska, the Pacific Ocean.
Oh my gosh! Well, you are way up there. Well, I'm glad you have how is internet delivered to your part of the world?
Very expensive, fairly crappy on good days and whatnot. But we do have some terrestrial internet. We are connected by fiber optic down to the lower part of Canada. So we do have half decent internet here now. And I've lived up here now 35 years. Originally born and raised in Toronto. And the place I live in, it's about an hour and a half south of here in the middle of nowhere.
Gotcha. And hey, I want to point out, I know we have listeners and viewers who will say, hey, Rob's mic didn't sound that good. Well, Rob is doing us a big favor by appearing so quickly today. He had a really busy day, and today was really the only day we could kind of get together and have him do the show, and he actually pushed some meetings out of the way. So yeah, I get that Rob's mic isn't perfect, so let's just hear what the content of what he has to say, because that's what's really key. So Rob, would you tell us the quick elevator story about you and how you're involved in broadcasting?
Right. So I guess it started ages back, 25 years ago. I was spending 6 months in the Yukon and 6 months in Southeast Asia. I would, I'd do a tour. I'd collect handicrafts. I would then bring them back to the Yukon and sell them at music festivals and flea markets and whatnot. My business started picking up, and I needed to send a fax to a purchase order to get more goods. And back in those days, that would mean, hooking up the dog team and then mushing into Whitehorse 175 miles away. And you could imagine that would be something in the middle of wintertime. And I thought, geez, there's got to be a better way than having to travel into Whitehorse to send a fax. In those days, there was nothing for communications in the town that I live in. And with a little bit of technical background, looking through back issues of Popular Science, I set up and designed a long-distance telecommunications network. And so I launched that in October of 1996. So I could pick up the phone in my house, and it was a dial tone in Whitehorse, and then somebody could send me a fax, and then it would then relay it through a mountaintop repeater site that was using VHF, UHF, full duplex radio, so with interconnect equipment at either end. And so anyhow, I could then receive my fax in the middle of nowhere. So I was in the media back in those days. Guy from Taggers builds a telephone system from stuff out of the dump. Most of the stuff was recycled electronic equipment. And meanwhile, the Bell Corporation was trying to get millions of dollars in subsidies, saying couldn't be done to get a telephone system to Taggers unless they had millions of dollars. So there was a bit of a interesting news story back in that day. So the next year I was out selling my stuff at flea markets, and people would say, "Hey, you're the guy with that fax machine telephone thing in the middle of nowhere. We want one of those." And I'd say, "No, you want these silk ties that I just brought over." And they said, "No, we want a telephone system so we can run our business." I said, "No, you want these stickers and shrunken heads from Borneo." And I had enough people saying, "Hey, we want communication stuff," that I retooled my business and got into communications. So right after that, I thought, geez, I've learned the two-way radio trade, and I'm doing really cool stuff in communications. What do I want to do next? And I thought, hey, I want to be a pirate radio station. Everybody wants to be a pirate radio station. And so I got a type-approved transmitter. I got some loose agreement that I could do a radio thing out in Tagish, in the middle of nowhere. I had to do, don't do anything offensive, don't do anything that's going to get complaints. And they would say, yeah, you go ahead and do your radio thing. And it was years later when I applied to the CRTC. That is the equivalent of the FCC in the United States. It was when I applied to the CRTC for an actual license. Before that, I was operating, I called it under-regulated radio. So when I was running my under-regulated radio station, they had all kinds of questions. How am I going to make my studio accessible to the public? How am I going to do community access programming? How am I going to do emergency broadcasting? And I really struggled with answering those questions. Number one, I barely had power in my house. My driveway wasn't even shoveled most of the year. I didn't want a bunch of people showing up to my house anyways in the middle of nowhere. I thought, how am I going to fulfill those obligations that they asked about to be a broadcaster? So I pitched the Yukon government here for a little bit of seed money, development money. And I said, geez, the internet one day is going to come to the Yukon. And wouldn't it be cool if we could use the internet as a communications messaging channel to produce programming and then use conventional FM radio as a last mile delivery? And so they put in a little bit of money. I developed a prototype. Geez, that was, 13, 15 years ago. Since then, it's become more robust. I've added more features. Done 4 or 5 different versions of that, and that allows the communities that use our system to run a radio station through a web interface. And essentially, what it means is you go to a website, pick out songs you want to listen to. The audience gets to create the programming. Somebody has material, they take their smartphone, they can upload it to a server. It automatically gets ingested and turns it into dynamic programming. And what really got our business off the ground a couple of years back was, when I first got into this business, I thought, well, okay, this is all really cool and everything, community programming and radio through a web interface, but how are you going to make money at this? That's the $1 million question. And I thought, well, you could do local advertising. But there's like one business that operates in the Yukon, and it's closed now. It's only open like 3 months a year, and there's like nothing. It's pretty small town. There's nothing going on there for commercial things, so not much for advertising. And I thought, well, what do people value and what do people want? Well, number one, they want to know if their house is burning down or if there's a chemical spill, and so right from day one. Cornerstone service has been in the emergency broadcasting, and 2 years ago, the Canadian government made it mandatory carriage that all radio and TV stations in Canada carry this emergency alerting system. It's all based on CAP, which is also the same protocol that the US system uses. And so I was able to add that feature into our systems and make it as a standalone appliance. So right now I've got over 100 radio TV stations across Canada that use our system that participate in the National Emergency Alerting System. They pull an EAS feed. If the emergency message matches up with their geographical location, it pulls the message in, automatically cuts it into the radio, and in the case of video, it does a overlay on the display and whatnot. So emergency broadcasting, all very important stuff.
So, one thing, Rob, that and thanks for that history from your starting and up to now. It's amazing where our lives take us, our life choices. Your website is openbroadcaster.com, and you list quite a few different solutions on your site. Everything from broadcast automation, as you mentioned, the emergency alert player, just regular streaming media where you can start your own internet station. Of course, a lot of different companies offer that kind of thing. You do mention LiveWire, audio over IP, as well as Ravenna. So you've got AOIP integrated into some of your systems, and media asset management, that kind of thing. So I guess I'm most interested in chatting about the ideas of taking radio automation and the emergency alerting stuff and running this in a maybe a server grade computer or a desktop type computer, but either running that on site at your station, or for those people who have convenient access to running that in the cloud somewhere, maybe at a data center to where they don't have to run that at their own site. Tell me about the possibilities for stations beginning to virtualize stuff that has been hardware in the past. That's kind of what got me interested in your solutions, that and you're a LiveWire partner. But what are the possibilities now for stations to shed some old hardware and run things where you're emulating the hardware by running this all in software on a server somewhere? Talk to me about that.
Right. So that touches on a couple of different areas. So, our customer base, our ideal customer is one that has money. And that's straight business 101. But a lot of the times somebody will come to us, especially with that emergency alerting requirement, and they'll say, hey, we have to buy an emergency alerting box. We're a small station in the middle of nowhere. We heard about you having your radio station out in remote Yukon territory. What can you do to help us? And so what I've done is I've published all of our source code in the public domain. It's all under a AGPL license. license that's a real open source license, so that if a small station that has a little bit of technical skills, they can download all of our software and they can set it up on a box that they found in the recycling center. So they don't have to go out and buy expensive proprietary equipment. They can also go, put it on some fancy brand new equipment too. It works just fine on that. And so I wanted to give back to the community with tools to assist broadcasters, not just in Canada, but internationally as well. So I guess the part of it is we specialize in three separate fields. One is open source broadcast automation, open source emergency alerting systems, and the other pillar that we work in is in accessibility. So if you're a blind user, visually impaired, our systems are all compatible with the modern screen readers. And we're always trying to make our systems more standardized. We do not want to try to reinvent the wheel. We want to make our stuff work with, the commodity stuff that you can just find in the dump. But at the same time, somebody will say, "Hey, we just bought a $20,000 Telos Alliance system, and what can you do with that?" So that's something really exciting. The past year and a half, we've been adding support for Livewire. And, as far as emergency alerting goes, one of the things that we've learned in the last couple of years is, how difficult it is to inject the emergency alerts into the broadcast chain. So, trying to provide remote support to different customers, it's been a challenge. Every radio station is different. Most of them are analog. They have different devices, different inputs, outputs, and that is where audio over IP comes in. Because now the way that we can set it up is you can put our software onto a box, or we have a off-the-shelf broadcast appliance, and you can just plug the network jack of our appliance into the digital engine of the Axia system, and it shows up as a channel on the board. So the configuration is like plug and play. You can't get any simpler than that, and that supports the high-end audio crowd. And for a marketing part as well, going through our partners at Telos Alliance and the Axia resellers worldwide, if they have customers that want to do really cool community user-generated programming, they can just plug one of our boxes into the core. That's a digital engine, and they're in business, and they can give out accounts that users can come in and run their 1 hour time slot, or upload community announcements or local media and whatnot, and it's all delivered through digital audio over IP technology.
So let me let Chris jump in here if he's got any questions at the moment. Chris, this is a hot topic for me because the stations that I own, I'd love to be able to consolidate a lot of my systems into some, and I'm willing to pay for server grade hardware or pay to have it in the cloud. I just want to eliminate the 72 power supplies that my stations currently depend upon, and the 28 spinning hard drives that they currently depend upon. I want to simplify my life, and I think that going into a virtualized environment may be able to do that for me. Chris, maybe you got some other ideas though, or questions for Rob.
Well, no, your ideas are right. I mean, you could probably definitely scale things down or go and get a server class stuff and put the software on there. This stuff, looking at the website and reading up on what he's been doing, makes total sense. Just curious, if I'm doing open broadcaster and I'm going to do video work and stuff, I'm assuming your software talks to most of the the input video cards and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's right. And when I first started this project years ago, and I suppose I launched my radio station out in Tagish in Labor Day weekend, 1997. I was the first commercial FM radio station in the Yukon that had an actual license from the CRTC, and a lot of the stuff was there was no internet to speak of here. Virtual servers, that was a thing that only could be used in big cities. So adding, we're saying to reduce the amount of spinning hard drives and power supplies, all those points of failures, they all keep a technician working around the clock to do all this stuff. Where, the putting stuff into the cloud, 10 years ago, everybody would be humming and hawing. Now this is the way it goes. You don't go to your bank anymore. You go to your bank's website. If you want to go to a shopping mall, you don't drive down to the shopping mall. You go to an online retailer and whatnot. So, doing things in the cloud is not unusual. Now, there is an issue with privacy, though, especially putting stuff into the cloud. Lots of places you upload your stuff into the cloud, you've now lost control of your intellectual property. You're in somebody else's cloud. You don't know what happened to your stuff. So with our systems, you have different options. You can build your own cloud. You could put your own server and run our software and set up your own cloud that people could come into it, and you could have 100% control of all of the material that's in that cloud. You could also, we can supply hosted services as well. Amazon Web Services, web hosting, bandwidth is dirt cheap in the United States. So there's lots of different options on that. And I suppose on the comment about video, I started out as radio and very passionate about radio. But when I had the vision of Open Broadcaster, it was to be able to broadcast media, not just audio, but video. And I saw, one day there's going to be giant pipes, for, broadband internet and video. So our stuff all supports those mediums, and it's the same interface. You don't have to learn a new tool. You're basically uploading media, adding media to a playlist, scheduling the playlist, and media asset management is what that's all about.
That's something I want to talk about after our commercial break, because media asset management is an idea that it's foreign to certainly a lot of radio engineers. I guess it's becoming more of a thing as we get more social media and we have more clips. It used to be that, hey, we sent the audio out to the transmitter and that was it, and you never saw it again or heard it again unless it was from a logger, from either a tape logger in the old days or a PC-based logging system. And you kind of hoped you didn't have to go back and get that stuff, because usually it meant somebody wanted to hear something of a legal nature or that their commercial ran. But media asset management is something that I think we're going to have to learn about, and what are the things involved. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Right now, Rob and Chris, we're going to break for a quick a commercial announcement from my friends at the Telos Alliance. In fact, we're going to be talking about a great streaming product, an encoder and audio processor. And a lot of people, they start encoding their stream on the internet and they forget about the audio processing, or they go grab an old analog processor they had sitting in the closet and use that. And that's okay. It's better than nothing. But what if you actually used the right thing? Let's hear about it right now from Telos and Zipstream.
Streaming audio? It's everywhere. Wi-Fi and connected cars mean easy access to your streams or your competitors. Zipstream X2 streaming software from the Telos Alliance, designed for stations whose audio quality is just as important for streaming as over the air. With Zipstream X2, you get premier audio processing from Omnia Audio, the same used by top radio stations around the world. Input audio from sound cards, live wire, or RTP streams. And for ultimate audio control, upgrade to the Zipstream 9X2, adding Omnia 9 audio processing with undo technology to correct overprocessed source material. After audio processing, the Zipstream X2 will encode streaming audio in multiple formats simultaneously, sending to multiple destinations. Choose from MP3, AAC, and popular AAC family members like HEAAC V2. All coding algorithms are fully licensed reference code for top quality sound. Zipstream X2 is ready for adaptive streaming, another streaming feature separating you from everyone else. With multi-rate adaptive streaming, you and your listeners are freed from manually selecting the trade-off between connection stability and audio quality. Zipstream X2 features control via HTML5 graphical web interface and REST API. It's cloud-ready and can be run entirely off-site at your data center. Plus, SNMP is fully supported. Zipstream X2, professional streaming software from the Telos Alliance.
And as a matter of fact, I use that on all my radio stations, and we get compliments on how good our stations sound. Actually, just to put the closing on that, at my stations, we're using the 9X2. That is the Omnia 9 processing on our streams. And we got a friend over in Europe who came up with an amazing preset for low bitrate audio. So we're running 48 kilobits per second, high efficiency AAC V2 on all of my stations. We have stations in Mississippi, Arkansas, and in American Samoa, and about to have one in Hawaii too. So they all sound great. So thanks a lot, Telos Alliance, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. And if you're streaming online, and if you want to even use Rob Hopkins Open Broadcaster as a distribution platform, you can do that too, using Zipstream X2 or 9X2, which runs, on a PC. All right, welcome back to This Week in Radio Tech. It's Kirk Harnack along with Chris Tobin. Chris is in New Jersey, and Chris, I guess you gotta hop off pretty soon here. You got any final words before you have to go, sir?
Oh no, I could squeeze out probably another 5 minutes or so. I'm
okay.
Checking around. Looks like nothing is happening yet, but it will be soon.
Well, good. Well, let's chat about this idea of media asset management, or MAM, or MAM. So, Rob, tell us what that is and why it's becoming important to broadcasters nowadays.
Right. So MAM systems. Most people haven't heard of a MAM system. You may have heard of a DAM system. DAM is Digital Asset Management Systems. And this, all the web services use all this to keep track of all your digital assets. So 20 years ago, you would have a hard drive, you would have a folder, you'd say family pictures, business pictures, right? Now you got a folder and a folder and a folder and a folder, and you got a million folders of different things and different resolutions and different formats. And this is all great. But if you have all this media on your computer, unless you can actually just put your fingers on it and say, hey, I need to find that thing, it's totally useless. So when I've got a background in IT management, with First Nation, American Indian organizations, and just as a typical example, they'll have 50 different workstations in their offices. They'll have a little bit of video on this workstation. They'll have some heritage pictures on this station. They'll have some audio recordings on this station. And some people will know that, hey, some of the recordings are on that workstation, but when it comes down to it, and somebody says, "Can you find me the recording of the elders' interview from 100 years ago?" Everybody will go, "I don't know, it's somewhere on our network. Somebody's got it at home. We can't find it." So digital asset management keeps all of your stuff in one central place. There's tons of information about digital asset management. What a MAM system is, I guess by definition, I'm no expert at this, but from what I see, a MAM system is just a DAM system that includes stuff for broadcasters. So DAM and MAM, same difference. They're both holding digital assets and whatnot. MAM is for broadcast.
Hey, Chris, if you could, before you have to leave, talk to us about media asset management in a place like, in a market like New York City, big stations, news operations, and we're talking radio at the moment. What kind of things have been in place there, and where does that industry need to go?
Well, there's been a lot of things in place. I'm not going to name brands or products of that sort, but a lot of the major stations I've worked with, we've had large systems, management asset systems. And basically, it's a huge database of pointers to the assets, whether it be audio and video. A lot of it's been primarily audio. So let's take, for instance, the newsrooms I've worked in. We've had various systems. One of them is from Canada, Burley, and their system is pretty wild, where you can tag everything and just type in what you're looking for, and it finds it, and you associate it with whatever story you're working with. And I think now they're working on video elements as well. So it's been around for a while. The place where you see a lot of it going headstrong, it's been really around for a long time, is in television studios, stations. Media asset management, I should say. And TV has been around for a long time, whether it be in physical tape, and the huge tape machines that were what do you call it, like large file cabinets of cartridges to now digital video storage, Profiler and stuff. So it's just a question of what you need for your particular application. If you're a news operation or sports, boy, I'll tell you that media asset room, server in the cloud or in the building, wherever it is probably huge, and lots going on. Take, for instance, NBC Olympics. they were doing media asset management from both Stamford, Connecticut, 30 Rock, and as well as in Korea. So, it was just all over the place. But again, it's like a, very, how would you say, very interactive database. And the trick is what the data is, files, pointers, and things of that sort. So what Rob's done is made it very simple and straightforward, and all the heavy lifting is done under the hood. You wouldn't even know it. You just have to worry about labeling it and coming up with your own way of categorizing what you want, so you don't have everything everywhere, but somewhere you can find it. Like, like you do tabs in a file drawer.
Yeah. Okay. So Rob, a bit more about media asset management. I guess for radio broadcasters for whom it's now easier and easier just to log all their audio, do we look at some of these new systems that will turn speech into text, and that way we can tag everything that was said and have searchable tags right along with that audio media that we're keeping or wanting to go back and reference again? Is that part of media asset management?
Yeah, that would be part of it, and that would be in the area of metadata. And metadata by definition is data within data. So 20 years ago you'd have an MP3 file, you have artist, title, year, maybe the album. But now, the metadata stuff that starts getting associated with a single piece of audio media is incredible. You can have thousands of different meta tags attached to it. You can have, where the thing was recorded, what mic they used, all kinds of different technical stuff inside it. The people that are in the audio, all this different metadata, and this is what makes really cool programming as well. So with our systems, you can create dynamic content. So you can make filters on the metadata, and so you can say, with all the, make up a playlist of material that's done searches through the metadata attached to the songs and the interviews and whatnot. And so rather than me going in, or users going in and dragging media items into a playlist that turns into a show, is you can have these smart filters that go in and run searches for the metadata. So then, the way that I have a really cool show that I run in my radio station in Tagish. I updated the playlist as like 5 years ago. It's a bunch of advanced searches and whatnot, looking for all kinds of Electric Light Orchestra type material, and Wizard and Jeff Lynne and Roy Wood, and we could go on and on about ELO and pinball machines, but anyhow, it's out of the scope of This Week in Radio Tech. And but anyhow, the way that it's set up is, there's these filters that are in this show. And so every day that this show plays at 9 o'clock at night, it goes in and it searches through all the different media. And old school would be add media to the show and whatnot. So what we do with this thing, and it's all based in the cloud, so we upload material and we add the metadata as we add the material. And when the show goes to play, it says, hey, new stuff which matches those filters in the show. That's how it ingests it automatically into the show. So this, user generated content, the computers are doing the heavy lifting, where before it was people that were sitting there adding material to the songs and the playlists.
So are you saying that this show, just an example, is more or less built on the fly based on search criteria?
Yeah, exactly. And with one of our groups, and there's other people sitting in the room here from community radio. We've got our salespeople here as well. They're all kind of shy here, but anyhow, community radio in Whitehorse. They've CJUC 92.5, the Juice, and anyhow, CJUC has about 30 active volunteers running that radio station at any given time. And so, everybody has different radio shows, different themes, different formats. And so there's all these different playlists and shows that are scheduled that have these advanced searches in it. So when somebody else adds material from somewhere else that matches up the metadata, it gets ingested and automatically gets created into the programming. So, I'm not saying at all that we want to replace humans in doing programming. We want to get the machines doing the work for us so that we can then kick back and enjoy the music that comes out of the radio.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree completely to let people do what they're best at and then let machines take over what is drudgery for people or just busy work. Let machines do the busy work. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like,
yeah, and with commercial stations and whatnot, the 10 years ago, it would take a dozen people to run the radio station. You need the manager, you need the DJ, the talent, you need the program director, you need the advertising salesperson, you need the receptionist, you need the bookkeeper, and all these different things. And nowadays, where it's hurting is you can't afford 12 people to run a small market radio station. The money's just not there. Google has sucked all the advertising out. The reason they're rich is they've done it for pennies, and they've got billions and billions of those pennies and whatnot. So small stations, even the big stations, just look at iHeartMedia, is you bloated workforce, non-sustainable. And so, trying to get the machines to do some of that drudgery stuff and, the routine management, I guess where you really want to do it, and I guess that's where I come into radio stuff, is when somebody comes to us, like with the community radio station or even my station in Tagish or any of our other users and whatnot, we want to have it set up so that when somebody comes in and says, hey, I got an idea to do a radio show, and what do I need to do? Then we can then get them onto the radio, get the talent doing their stuff as quickly as possible without having to go through months of training, without months of mentoring and whatnot. We give them an account, we give them permissions to do certain things. And when we start somebody off, if we don't really know them, then they get real basic permissions. When they learn, when we know that they're not doing profane things or hate material, then we can increase their permissions so they can approve their own content before it's vetted. And then when they prove themselves and they say, hey, somebody really cool about radio and they're doing really neat things, then we can increase their permissions a bit more. So now they can approve other users and other users' material, and then they can become managers, and then they can become moderators of other radio stations that then get to swap programming among those other networks and whatnot. So the machines are doing a lot of that management stuff, and we get to do really cool radio.
Wow, that's amazing. Because so it's like, let's say that you have a volunteer or a paid employee who's doing a particularly good job of some particular show. You like ELO. Let's say it's a show about Jeff Lynne and ELO and music like that from that era. So you've got somebody who's doing a really good job of that. And you say, it's a shame this is only on one radio station. Maybe we should offer this up to some of our friends in other communities and see if they want to play the show or a variant of it. You're saying that a system like yours allows you to share and swap that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, let me tell you about Electric Light Orchestra. Holy man, I've got stories about ELO, man. But no, I'm getting nudged here. I'm not allowed to get off on Jeff Lynne. But I am seeing ELO in concert in August 18th in Toronto, if anybody's down that neck of the woods. But anyhow, without going on too much about Electric Light Orchestra. So, yes, and even better than that, like, for example, in the north, in the Yukon here, we have a network of radio stations, geographically separated by hundreds and hundreds of miles. We're talking about rugged terrain, expensive places to get to, fly-in only, minus 50 degree Celsius Fahrenheit weather. You're not going to the station at minus 50. It's too friggin' cold, man. You can't get the dog team fired up. And so being able to do this stuff through a unified web interface allows volunteers and people to do this stuff. So what you were saying about sharing content, yeah, that's really easy. Yeah, you can share content, you can share playlists, no rocket science in that. But one of the things, the tools that we have, again, to reduce some of this TDM management is I have my SMUT show, SMUT secret messages, other unusual transmissions. That's an ELO show. And anyhow, when my SMUT show plays in Tagish, then it's personalized for Tagish. And, it says you're listening to the SMUT show, and this is ELO, and the station ID for CFAT radio, blah, blah, blah. All the ads, all the PSAs, commercial stuff is all for my small community in Tagish. Now, I have another radio station in Haines Junction. That's an hour and a half north of Whitehorse, a small community. And when that same show plays over there, it's personalized automatically to that community. It plays the commercial ads for Haines Junction. It says the station IDs are for Haines Junction. The weather is for Haines Junction. So all I had to do is just drag the playlist and say, okay, play on that other radio station, and then it automatically does the ad substitution and whatnot. So, having those kinds of tools makes it much easier to create localized programming rather than spending, days or hours a day of personalizing everything manually for those different radio stations.
Wow, amazing! That's so cool. You understand, Chris has got to run. He's got to go run and talk to the governor. So, Chris, thanks for joining us, and I think that Rob and I will continue to talk for a few more minutes here. I appreciate joining us,
no
buddy.
problem.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
enjoyed it. Oh, thank you, Rob. No, I know the software. I've used it on a couple occasions on small projects, so I'm quite happy to be able to talk with you and hear the stories behind it. So that's a lot of fun. But I'll leave you gentlemen to having some good times, and I'm going to run off and see about a governor who wants to do a radio show. How about that? Huh? Who would have thought?
Chris, I hope to see you Tuesday evening in New York City. I'll be there for a quick trip, and we'll plan our continued takeover of the radio industry.
Excellent. Yes, Tuesday would work out because we're doing Juilliard in the morning. Yeah. Tuesday should work out nice in the evening and Wednesday as well. I'll see what I can do about Wednesday.
Okay. We'll see you. You take care. All right. That's Chris Tobin.
Yes.
He's got to go talk to the governor. Well, in Birmingham, they love the governor. I guess they do too in Newark. All right. So this week in radio. This Week in Radio Tech, episode 388. We're talking with Rob Hopkins. And tell you what, Rob, we're going to take one more quick break. And when we come back, I'd love to hear from you. I know we could talk for a long time about all the things that this open broadcaster stuff can do because you're into video and audio and sharing and helping people produce radio from home and in the cloud or not in the cloud. My goodness. But I would love to point people where they can see demonstrations, video demonstrations, where they can tune in online and hear the result or see the result of these systems working. So we're going to do that when we come back. Right now, I want to hear from our friends at Lavo talking about the Ruby console. Take it away.
There has probably never been a better time in history to buy a new radio mixing console. Today's consoles are more sophisticated than ever, with more features and functions than you can shake a stick at, but have you noticed how complicated they are? There's a sea of knobs and switches and displays and buttons. Some of them look like you might need a pilot's license to do your show. Well, a board doesn't have to be complicated to be powerful. Just look at the new Ruby mixing surface from Lavo. The first thing you notice is how smooth and streamlined it is. Ruby has lots of cool tech, but what it doesn't have is that confusing ocean of buttons that clutter things up. Now, we all know that there are some console features the jock only uses once in a while, so why dedicate controls to them? Ruby fixes this problem by moving those once-in-a-blue-moon controls to a touch-sensitive, customizable GUI that happily shares screen space with your other studio software, helping you fight control room clutter. Thanks to this design innovation, talent that use Ruby produce smoother shows with less errors. Controls that are used the most fall naturally to hand, while functions that rarely need adjustment are easily controlled with just a couple of clicks in the context-sensitive GUI. And Ruby has cool features you won't find on other boards, like Auto Mix, an intelligent gain writing function that guarantees the perfect mix for multi-mic morning shows and call-in segments. Dual mode snapshots that instantly switch the motorized faders between on-air and production modes, and enough DSP and I/O options to make even your pro sound pals green with envy. And because quality is as important to Lavo as it is to you, every console is proudly built to fanatically precise standards at Lavo's own factory in Germany. If you're ready to declutter your control room, do yourself a favor. Check out the new Ruby and the other cool Lavo radio tech at www.lawo.com/TWiRT.
And thanks a lot to Lavo and for their sponsorship. And you should check out their consoles. If you do, please go to Lavo, lawo.com/TWiRT. And they're doing things that are ready for cloudification as well, where different people can contribute and run a lot of things on one server. So that's, I think that a lot of future is going there. So Rob Hopkins is our guest. He's with openbroadcaster.com. And Rob is really actively involved in tying together a lot of communities and getting to share talent and volunteers who are radio producers and show hosts and engineers and IT people to get them all together and produce better radio for these small communities. And I'd like to take those ideas and move them into into larger areas, which Rob, I'm sure you're already doing. So Rob, I'm a little wonder if you'd talk to us for a minute about before we get to where to get more information and where to see demos. Tell me a bit about video. I know very little about video for radio other than we've put some of our radio stations on cable networks. We're not streaming them live at any point yet. How is video? How are you guys and your customers using video with radio?
Right. Yeah. So there's a couple of different aspects. So number one, all of us in the media business, we're all dealing with convergence. That's where we have all these different mediums all coming together. And today we were just at the CBC studios in Whitehorse. That's our national broadcaster. I don't know what you got. PBS in the States, and we were looking at there, and so 20 years ago they had their radio department, they had their TV department. Now they've got their everything's all combined. So you have the radio person standing on the TV doing interviews. You have the TV producer recording audio for the shows. You have everybody doing web things and whatnot. So exciting time for all of us to be in media right now with convergence. Everything's all coming together into different things. And so as far as the separation between radio and TV, 10, 20 years from now, we aren't going to be talking about any of this. We're just going to be talking about media. And, that's where some of our stuff comes in. But, like I was talking a little bit before about some of the challenges commercial broadcasters have, generating revenue. And, like I say, the old style, the license to print money, Google has taken that license away from a lot of these stations and whatnot, with having to figure out different models of revenue generation. I'll just talk about a scenario is, if I was going to take over a radio station in the States, somebody said, hey, our radio station's broke, we're going bankrupt, we're finished, what can you do? I'd say, hey, get rid of, trim the fat. You got no choice in it. You can't afford this. You're not sustainable. You get some really good talent, some media producers. You get a community engagement person. And this is a commercial radio station I'm talking about, one that needs to make money. You get a community engagement person. And they can go out and they can recruit volunteer talent. There's people out there that say, hey, I'd love to do radio stuff. I'd love to get on the radio. You don't even have to pay me to do something. And so they'll go in, you give them an account, they make a playlist and they add content to it. And, content attracts listeners. They got listeners. You can go to advertisers. You can get nickels and dimes from your advertisers. So you can have a radio programming 24 hours a day given out to people that are passionate in the community that want to do radio stuff. And then you can then take that stuff and you can then spend time on selling commercial ads because now you got people coming into your radio station listening to local programming. So different business models. and that's harnessing the volunteer labor. When I go to a news site now, I barely read the news story. I read through the comments, and I look through the comments, and then if I see any of the comments, I look at it. Then I look at the story to validate the comments. If I see enough stuff in the comments, it's interesting. Then I go and read the story. But very rarely do I go and read the whole story through and then look at people's comments to see what they think. No, I want to look at the volunteer stuff. Number one, it's unbiased, and it's all over left, right field and whatnot. But anyhow, that just goes as an example to show what is going on with user-generated content. Remember, all those people that do tens of thousands of millions of hours of comments, they are getting paid zero. Nobody's paying them anything on that, and that's what's attracting people to those media sites. So we can do the same thing with radio, and we do that with radio. And when you're talking about, how does video come into radio? Well, like I say, 20 years from now, it's all going to be media. But for right now, a radio station, they're doing media, audio recordings and whatnot, playing it on the radio and whatnot. And they've got some money tied up in infrastructure, server stuff, playout boxes in the cloud. They got an advertising person, so you can make some money at this thing. You've got the creative people and whatnot. So why not get into doing video or images and whatnot? An example is, let's say you have a commercial radio station. I'm talking to you folks down in the U.S. In small towns. You've got a small town, 1,000 people, 5,000 people. You've got a couple of gas stations. You've got a corner store. You've got a community club. You've got a central government place where people come around. You're capturing some of that audience with local content, right? You've lost out to the big players with the national programming. They don't do any local news, so your only hope is capturing some of that local market because you're providing local content. So they're driving around their cars listening to your radio station and listening to the newscast that you put on twice a day or 2 or 3 times a day. And so that's great. So when they go into that grocery store or that corner store and whatnot, you can put a computer screen hanging on the wall, a digital display signage. And you've already got all the talent in-house already to do this. If you're using one of our media servers, you've got all the infrastructure. The cost of one of those computer screens with a playout box attached to the back of it, way less than $1,000. Now you can go and you could sell advertising impressions on how many slides that you can have playing on that screen and whatnot, and you can manage that all through one simple web interface without having to add anything. So that's another revenue generation stream.
Sure. Hey, Rob, this sounds like a dream in so many ways, especially for small town radio. But I know there's good things here for larger broadcasters too. We're about at the end of our time. If people are interested and want to either see a demo, see some video about how this works or what it does, I know there's your website, openbroadcaster.com. Are there some assets there, brochures or things that people could look at and start to understand what you've been talking about?
Yeah, I just go to www.openbroadcaster.com. We have marketing material on that site, brochures, all that kind of stuff. You can shoot me an email, look me up. And by the way, my handle is Radio Rob. So if you just want to find me, just Radio Rob Yukon, really easy to find. And we do have online videos, demonstration videos, all kinds of neat stuff that will help small market and big broadcasters as well.
I'll go ahead and put links to all the things that I can find that look helpful in the show notes. I especially like demo videos. Hey, are you going to be at NAB, or any of your colleagues going to be at NAB?
Probably not. I've never been to NAB. I'd like to go one day, but one of these days. It's not that I can't get into the States. It's just I'm afraid I won't be able to get out of the States.
What about Wabi or CCBE or one of those shows? Are you at any of those in Canada?
Right. I've been to both of them. Excellent conferences. I presented technical papers at both of them,
Good.
and yeah, I'm actually right now. What we're doing this week is we're doing a small mini conference for broadcasters up in the Yukon territory, all about open source and broadcasting.
Good deal. Okay, well, we'll put your contact info in the show notes, and hopefully people can contact you that way. I'll be exploring your software and demos and offerings as well, and I'm curious to see where this goes, and I'd love to see you do very, very well with this.
Well, thanks, Kurt. And yeah, again, it's Radio Rob. It's been a pleasure being on your show. And yeah, I know there's people out there in radio land that I've talked with for years down in the U.S. And yeah, I'd love to get together. So if you're ever up in the Yukon territory, we'll get together and have some smoked moose nose sandwiches.
I'd love it. By the way, my friend John Anthonuk says hello. He's over in Alaska, and he's watching the show. So he says hi, and there's hundreds of others too watching. So look to get a little bit of publicity here. Rob, thanks very much.
Yeah, right on, Kurt. Yeah, been a pleasure, and thanks a lot for having us on your show.
Okay, appreciate you taking the time, and especially going the effort to get set up there. I know it was a little challenging, and you've got a lot to do and places to go. So thanks again. I want to thank Chris Tobin. He had to bug out a few minutes ago. Also thank Rob Hopkins, our guest, with openbroadcaster.com. And look at the show notes. You'll see some links there as soon as we get those put up. Also want to thank Suncast, our producer, for putting the show together. And thanks for his technical expertise and making things look good when when it's hard to do so. And he really does a great job with that. Thanks also to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ network. All right, we got some NAB related shows coming up, and just an amazing array of stuff. In fact, we've hired a booker, so we're gonna yeah, some of our shows are gonna be booked by a professional coming up, so hang on for that. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.